welcome to the Connect stage here at Enlit Europe. I'm joined by Sabine Erlinghagen, CEO of Siemens Digital Grids. Sabine, thanks for joining me today.
Kevin, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And we're here to discuss COP26. What next is the theme of the session. So first of all, I was wondering what your takeaways were from COP. Were you encouraged, disappointed, somewhere in between?
I guess many of us, including me, were hoping for more. We're hoping for more decisive steps, for clearer signaling into the market, and a clear exit on coal, a clear commitment to electrical vehicles. So I would say so is my takeaway. I think for accelerating the energy transition, decisive steps are definitely needed. Though I think the signals are getting louder and clearer. So if you would want to invest in coal these days, if you want to invest in combustion engines for cars, you actually got the signal that this is maybe not the best investment in the world. So I would have hoped for more, but still the signaling and the direction that has been given is really clear. And I think that's something you can build on and we can plan for.
Mm. So you would have hoped for more, and presumably at Siemens, you're planning for more all
Absolutely.
the time. So it's the fact that you're not getting more from a policy standpoint holding you back, and in turn holding back the pace of the overall transition.
Not at all. I do actually think that the pace of the overall transition might be faster than the policymakers. If I look at just the latest Bloomberg numbers that came out, 10% of all vehicles that are sold in the market today are electric, and that is beating every prognosis that was out there. So the pace is accelerating. It's much faster than what has been predicted. And that's the real challenge, to keep that momentum, to build on that momentum and prepare our systems, our infrastructure in a smart way for the changes that are coming massively, despite maybe policymakers still not being super decisive. Mm.
And so how do you prepare the infrastructure? What are the key things that you think need to be done, and in what kind of time frame?
I mean, obviously, digitalization is a key enabler for that. And why is that? It's actually two things. The complexity that we're seeing with distributed energy resources on the rise. We are talking about a 7x growth in distributed energy resources until 2030. And with that in mind, the complexity of what we have to deal with, especially the grid operators, as they keep the grid stable, is increasing exponentially. At the same time, it's very hard to predict what's coming and when it's coming. You know it's coming somehow, but you don't know where in the grid. You don't know how fast. You don't know what charging behaviors, for instance, will look like. So it's the increasing complexity at the same time of that you have the uncertainty out there, the uncertainty of how it's unfolding, how it's going to play out. So the recipe on that end is to be nimble and adaptable. So to be proactive in your planning, to be able to adapt to whatever scenario is coming out.
Mm-hmm. So that said, for Siemens Digital Grid, what regardless of what came out of COP, but what are the imperatives for you for the next year going forward?
I mean, look, that's a two-sided question. As Siemens, with our degree framework that we just published, we clearly commit to the 1.5 degree path. And we clearly commit to taking all the actions as an enterprise, as a company ourselves. The second thing, obviously, where the lever is even bigger, is that we can help accelerate the energy transition, can help industry, can help infrastructure, and can help grid operators to do so. And we do that, we say, connecting the physical and the digital world. So making sure that we can plan and simulate ahead, and that we can reduce the complexity that is out there in the world with our digital twin technology, and help operators and infrastructure to maneuver through those changes.
And you talked about industry and mobility and all these various sectors. Is one of them, are the gains more attainable? Is there some low-hanging fruit in some, and is there one that's more difficult?
I think the low-hanging fruit, or where I see the acceleration really coming, is in distributed energy resources. It's if you remember the smartphones, it was an independent decision of many people to choose a smartphone over a conventional phone, and within very short time you saw that transition happening and everybody had a smartphone, right? We still remember that point in time, and the same can happen when we talk about distributed energy resources. Every infrastructure, every supermarket, every university, every hospital, every harbor, every home can independently make that choice. And if we enable that choice to be a very easy choice, to be very fast, then that's actually a low-hanging fruit, because we can make it happen by a lot of people doing things simultaneously and driving up the share of renewables in the world.
And you talked about enabling that choice and getting people, and yes, that choice is there for people, just to say consumers, to make. Do enough of them make it, and then do enough people, within industry make it? Do they know that it's there and it's that easy to make?
I think by now everybody knows it's there. I mean, you know about batteries, you know about solar panels and the like. So that's no news. I think the news is that it definitely is both a return on investment game as well as a CO2 saving game. So you're not saying either it's higher cost and better CO2 or the other way around, but you actually can achieve both at the same time. And then it boils down to transaction costs. And that is where, as Siemens, we are a partner to reduce the transaction cost and really help from planning, from dimensioning, from commercial return point of view, from the installation, the commissioning, and then the operations of the system, to make it not only an economical and an ecological choice, but to make it really easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've had a couple of challenging years. We're still very much in the thick of the pandemic. I'm just wondering how the digital solutions that you may have been working on prior to the pandemic, did you have to accelerate any of them to enable maybe remote operations or things like during the pandemic?
Look, we were preparing that way ahead, and we have digital connections to all of our sites. And I think what the pandemic accelerated is actually the acceptance to work with customers in that remote way. Before, there was a hesitance, can't you come on site? Can't you do it physically? And the service was perceived to be better when on site, while now don't have those discussions anymore, because we all learned as a society that collaborating virtually works quite well, and hence providing a service virtually is as good of a service, maybe even a better one, because you don't need to wait until somebody travels on site and until you actually get the person to drive there with a truck.
Mm-hmm. And so those changes that have come in, those virtual changes that have come in during the pandemic, they're here to stay now, you think?
I am absolutely convinced that this is the case. I mean, I don't know about your day-to-day life, but video conferences all over the place, that is here to stay. And I think it's about taking advantage of time in a much smarter way, right? When we meet, we actually take advantage of it and use it for the quality. And likewise, the push in digitalization and the thought of what is possible, the imagination of how fast a change can happen, that's there to stay. And that's also what we see with customers. It's not only about accelerating the energy transition, but also the digital revolution.
And so, on that thought of what's possible, what's the one thing that you think that is going to happen perhaps in the next year that you're most excited about or hoping for?
That's an interesting question. I think one thing that excited me quite a bit is that we actually, in Hawaii, by the way, showed the proof that 100% renewable energy generation for an entire grid of that size is possible, and that we are able to keep the grid stable in a 100% renewable world. So while there's those doomsday questions and thoughts and worries about 100% renewables, will that keep our lights on? I think we have delivered the proof that we can keep the grid stable in a 100% renewable scenario with a lot of inverter-based injections. And that's something which is exciting me quite a bit, because it actually puts the latest doubt to bed of whether it's possible or not. And here we go. It's about imagining what's possible and then striving down that road.
Yeah. And so that's what one thing that is possible that was within reach and now has been reached. Well, what's the one thing that is perhaps maybe still out of reach, but you know you're going to get there? What's the next big leap?
I think the interesting bit I'm going to answer with something that is around for a very long time, but that we as an industry haven't yet cracked, and that's the IT and OT convergence. So if you look into grid operators, how they're structured, a lot of times you have an OT and an IT department, and in many cases at least, there's still that competing paradigms around. And where I'm very convinced is that with the perspectives that we are laying out as Siemens and with our roadmap ahead, we can overcome that competing priorities, and we can actually take the best of both worlds and make that an integrated approach that is both stable and reliable as the OT part, and at the same time upgradable and cyber secure as the IT part, and take advantage of both those paradigms and have us benefit from the best of it.
Great. Sabine, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Kelvin.
Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.